That's it, we're up and running. Joe Keating, welcome to the live cost construction experience.
Delighted to be here, Kieran.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation.
Joe, when we talk about data, right, we straight away, my mind goes into a place of, we think about Facebook or Amazon and what they're doing with their data, but I suppose data isn't that. It's like the small businesses now that are using data to sort of optimize performance and increase all sorts of different areas in the business. You're a chief data officer, right? For people like myself and people in my industry, what is a chief data officer? What does that actually do?
A chief data officer is someone who is on the executive team within a business typically, and they're tasked with optimizing the use of information within the business with a view to maximizing efficiency and automation.
Yeah.
To achieve what the business is trying to do. In short, that's a reasonable overview, but the role can be different company to company. It's a relatively new role, less than 10 years old.
Yeah. And how did you come about to that? Like what?
How did I become a chief data officer?
Yeah. How does that come about? How does someone listening in saying, I wouldn't mind being one of them?
Yeah.
What's the
I
role?
think you're questioning me and saying, how did you get to be a chief data officer?
Well, that's
a fair question.
Let's start there, because we always like to get into the guy behind the business, and you're with Glantus, a top company in the country. How did you end up with Glantus? Where did all that come about?
I'll give a quick overview of where I started out, so people get a view of who I am, I suppose, and then I'll touch on how I get into Glantus or how that started. I started out, left school and started a course, a PLC course in computers, because a friend of mine, believe it or not, was doing it and said, look, this looks good. I think there's going to be jobs here in computers. And I said, look, I'm in. Went along, did it 2 years, but before I'd even finished that second year, I was into a job. So I started with PM Group and stayed there for about 10 years. So big engineering company. I was part of the software arm of the business. Fantastic experience, great company to work for.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. And then I went on from there. Somebody who'd left that business had gone to a software company, and I went to work there as head of business intelligence, which at the time would have been helping companies to report on information a lot easier and bring in visualization into the business and avoid the overuse of paper and spreadsheets and stuff like that. So BI was a term back then, business intelligence. I got in at that stage, which was early days actually in some senses. And then went on from there to a big consultancy firm called Version 1. And Version 1 would still be a massive organisation. So they're a consultancy company, IT consultancy. Great company again. So I've been lucky that I've worked for excellent companies, and Ireland has a lot of them. And I went to Dublin Airport for a while, 7 minutes from my house. Lovely. That was nice.
Lovely. Yeah, that's an important point, as you're a north sider like myself. So
I am.
Really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I was still, relationships are important in business. And I'd had a great relationship with people over the years. And one of them was a guy called Jeff Keating, who was actually CTO at Glantus.
Okay.
So myself and Jeff would meet up for coffee now and again. We met up a few times before I came on board with Glantus, and it took about 6 months before I made the decision to take the leap, but haven't looked back.
Yeah, it's gone well, Glantus, hasn't it?
It's going very well.
Yeah.
It's busy, it's challenging, but it's really satisfying to be part of a growing business.
Give us a quick snapshot of what Glantus do then, as a company.
We provide software to organisations to help them get the most out of the information in their business, to reduce the paper trails in their business and bring automation into their processes.
Yeah.
So it helps with efficiency, delivering more with less people, avoiding the need to take on staff maybe where there's a big administrative burden, by bringing in our technology that can automate processes or part of a process. Brilliant. To alleviate the effort.
Brilliant. And I'd love to get into some examples you have, maybe some, because the reason you're sitting here today is you guys are active in construction, and there's a big, we speak with a lot of developers as well ourselves with what we do in our own business, and that data conversation gets lost. I mean, data isn't new. You told a story before which grabbed my attention about a man called Jon Snow, and he isn't the Jon Snow that we're familiar with off the Game of Thrones.
I don't know that one actually.
Do you not?
No.
Okay.
And people have said to me before, and I've said, I don't know what you're talking about. I only know one Jon Snow.
The Jon Snow on the recent TV carries a sword and he's got a cool hair.
Okay.
But,
bit different to this guy.
This guy is different. Tell us a bit about him.
Jon Snow was a young man who was around at the time of the plague, who was really interested in medicine. He grew up as a smart kid, good with maths and that sort of stuff, and eventually became a physicist. And he was one of the pioneers in terms of the use of data. This is back, hundreds of years ago. So the plague outbreak was happening around London, and Jon Snow took it upon himself to basically start gathering information by speaking to people about the deaths that had occurred. Yeah. So he spoke to people who would have had relatives that died and asked them, what were their habits. He had a particular sort of view of what might have been going on. And his take was that this wasn't something that was being passed through the air. It was possible that it was being passed through the water system.
Okay.
So by asking people about the deaths that occurred and plotting the information about the deaths that occurred on a map of Soho in London, he was able to basically hone in and make a very good case and a strong case to say that there was a specific water pump that was causing the issue, and that was a pump on Broad Street, this place in London.
So he's collecting and analysing data.
Yeah, he basically put red dots on a map of the area and then drew a circle around it, and right in the middle of everything was this pump. So what he did was he was trying to convince the local authorities that this was an issue. They wouldn't really hear of it. So eventually the pump was taken out of commission, and almost overnight the effects decreased in terms of the deaths decreased. And Jon Snow didn't really get recognised for his impact then, and it was a really difficult situation, I suppose, because it turned out that there was sewage that was leaking into that water system, into that water tank, and people were being affected by that. But it was only after he died he got recognition for what he did. But he was one of the pioneers for data and analysis. So
when someone says to you that we're not quite ready for this data revolution and data science, it's a good case.
There's a great case for solving a problem. Finding out, see an issue, find out the data to support, insight, analyse it, and you'll come up with a conclusion.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, a data-based decision is, going to be more accurate than a gut feel decision.
And technology being the enabler of this.
Yeah. Why not? Why wouldn't you use technology if it's there? I mean, Jon Snow did it on paper.
Yeah.
But we're way ahead of that in terms of we don't even, need to look at plotting all that on paper. We can have that automatically, information for any real question that's asked, gathered automatically, and an answer output or a set of answers that are, suggestions as to what the answer is.
Yeah.
So, we use AI at home with Alexa and whatever else. You're asking a question, you're getting an answer. Data is driving all of that.
Yeah.
And that's a simple example of where we're being assisted in life with data and automation.
And a lot of people, I think, can be frightened by it, and it's the fear of the unknown. I don't know about this, therefore I don't want to put this into my business because I don't actually understand it fully. I remember when we sat down first, you said something to me is the data is simple, right? And that struck me, and I was saying, well, I don't understand this simplicity of it. You broke that down into 4 areas of AAA plus.
Yeah.
Comes to the top of my head.
Yeah.
Explain that, please.
Well, there's a methodology that I suppose I created to convey how simple it is to work with data. And I see it as being 3 fundamental steps with an extra step that we have now.
Yeah.
So going back to even the Jon Snow method of what he did, he acquired data. Yeah. So gathered information. He had a question, as in, why are people dying, let's say?
Yeah.
What's going on? So he acquired information. The deaths are occurring. When are they occurring? Where are they occurring? Basic pieces of information. So that's the acquisition of data.
Yeah.
You gather it together. It could be on anything. It could be about, what's the status of the build on our construction sites. Gather the information as efficiently as possible. And that doesn't mean ring up everyone, because that's going to take time. It doesn't mean get everyone to send in paper. it's going to take time.
Yeah.
Enable them with a digital mechanism to just take a snapshot of here's where things are today, and centralize it, and you've got a pool of information. Then you can analyze the information. So that's the second A in the AAA system, let's call it. So analyzing information is quite straightforward. You know, you can look at it yourself, or you can automate the analysis of information. But let's take it that, you know, we look at it and you go, okay, I have this information together. So let's take the site example. So I'm looking to find out the progress of a site in line with where we forecast we'd be. Very straightforward. You have two inputs there. You have the updates from the sites about the real-time status of the constructions, and then you have the forecast of where you expect it to be. Costs can come into that, as you'd well know. So cost, budget versus actual. You got those pieces of information, you can then analyse it and see where there might be issues, or actually see where there could be future issues.
We harp on about this all the time, and unfortunately construction industry are, you know, being there myself, we react to situations. It's still today, and you know, we're both sort of working with some developers in the country as well, and it's still surprises me that in this day and age, with technology that's not massively expensive, there's technology available to us, not hugely expensive, that we're still reacting. And in our world, we deal with costs, so it's reacting to invoice and reacting to stuff that's happening on jobs rather than be proactive. So one of the things that you cover within them 3 years is giving themselves the information to react rather than...
be proactive.
Like
to have awareness of things before they happen, in theory. So you'd have sight of it, which is always helpful. I mean, if that's a differentiator, to have sight of things before they happen. So in the case of, let's just say, Gannon Homes are a customer of ours, so they have the ability to inform their customer who's buying a house, let's say, in real time of a change in the completion date on a house. That's quite powerful. And it could be a differentiator for them. And it is, actually. Because there's people that don't know that, and they move out of rental properties and then they're delayed in moving in. There's nothing worse.
Huge frustration.
For a customer relationship, that's a bit of a, big issue.
So they use, and that's a good use case of how data can be applied in a construction context, and they're using your platform to track that information, are they?
They are, and they're using it quite effectively. If we come back to those 3 A's, the third A in that AAA model is that you action the data. So there's this particular example where there's an action occurring, somebody is getting notified that a delivery date's changed, but that could well be that, hey, automation is the plus, right? So it's acquisition of data, the analysis of data, the actioning, but you can automate this now. So our platform provides a lot of automation for construction companies, let's say, or any organization, but construction, let's keep it on that, in terms of those updates to whether it's the customer or whether it's the foreman or whatever. It's about letting people know ahead of time that, hey, you've got, based on the way things are looking at the moment, you're going to go over the delivery date. If that becomes a definite thing, then the customer is automatically updated about that delivery date and the change in when they're going to have access to the home, for instance.
You touched on something before I get into that use case, which I think would be great to talk about. What is predictive analytics?
I could go on about that for a while, but I'll keep it really simple. It's about using historical information and environmental factors to predict an outcome.
Brilliant.
So that's it, in a nutshell.
We use elements of this in ourselves, but you guys will do it on a different level. It's learning from what we've done in the past to mitigate against them risks in the future. Is that? You can also though bring in other forms of information. So it could be that, you might be predicting, let's say, for example, you probably are, you do some sort of forecast on your product sales or whatever it might be. Well, you can feed into that not just your historical product sales, but you can also bring in information, environmental factors about the marketplace. What about competitors in the market? What about trends in terms of spend within IT businesses or construction industry generally? And then you can get an even more informed forecast. I love this space because I think it's untouched within the construction sector. I think so. We do elements of this, okay, and again, we're so niche and so focused that we just do it on cost. But when I look at a construction project, and let's say we're laying a full slab on a new apartment block, and we could learn from what the last apartment block done and take into consideration weather, fluctuation of material, all that type of stuff. Like, it's such a game changer.
It's just being smart though. When you think about it, why wouldn't you do that? Because if it's going to save you money and it's going to save you time and just increase efficiency. I ask people a lot. I do talks and stuff at places. One of the things I put out to people regularly is, why are you still using spreadsheets to try and manage this information or gather it, and you're losing out on lots of information that's out there that you're not utilising.
Yeah.
As you said, this stuff isn't cheap. Our platform is isn't expensive.
Yeah.
Our platform, for instance, is quite reasonable, and it's on a monthly basis, and it's when you get the value you pay.
Is there a lack of understanding there, Joe, do you think, like, as in people just don't understand that the cost of acquisition of software, like, versus return on investment can be tenfold? And like,
robotics is a great example. Sherry Fitzgerald are a customer of ours, and they're involved in lots of different aspects of using our software, but one of them is actually they're a Gannon Homes supplier.
Yeah.
So they sell homes on behalf of Gannon, or sell houses on behalf of Gannon Homes. They have a direct input in real time as to the sales status of a home, and they set the prices straight into the Gannon Home information.
Excellent.
Great example of just real time updates. Yeah. Previously they'd have been sending information in spreadsheets, and Gannon Homes would have been re-inputting that into their system. Gone away with. There's one central repository, and it's an ecosystem, so the architects feed into that.
Brilliant.
And then the banks, in theory, have access to that for the likes of validating a drawdown, proving a drawdown. So again, it comes back to the construction updates. But there's a lot of automation driving lots of different elements in there.
Like, that's so smart, as you say. Like, it sounds simple, but it is just smart, right? So what's going to slow down the project? Well, if we can't get the next payment down from the bank, we're going to slow up. We're going to slow the project. That's costing us money. Can we automate that process and make that process quicker?
Yeah.
And we're saving money.
Alleviate it. And people, in the likes of a Sherry Fitzgerald or whatever, as soon as, ways of working are in and they're helping, people forget about them. Even robotics is part of what we do. And I know that sounds really, robotics, but it's just process automation. So, for instance, in Sherry Fitzgerald, we would handle a lot of their email activity. So if they're getting emails in for people to register for developments, for marketing purposes and so on, and hearing about developments, those emails are automatically handled. So basically, it's a web inquiry. Say, I want to register for this. That email, when it comes in real time, it's picked up. It's identified as this is somebody looking to be added to this list for marketing for this development, and they're added to that database. So they just get those updates about that development. No person involved. Yeah. So the emails are dealt with. There's a reasonable percentage of their emails are now managed automatically.
Yeah.
And nobody's aware of that. But the guys in the business get so used to it becomes they just don't even remember the times they had to deal with that.
Yeah. Give me just to bring it back a step there, the Gannon Homes one. So we ourselves in Lifecost, we deal with residential developers ourselves. So we would have a lot of listeners in that would be in that space. What was the problem Gannon Homes came to you with?
They had a number of problems when they came to us. There was nothing that was going to change the business fundamentally, in terms of they weren't in a really bad situation. However, their head of finance, Mark Fitzpatrick, is a very progressive person, and he saw a huge opportunity to bring efficiencies into the business. Yeah. So they came to us on day one and said, we're using paper all over the business. It's stopping us from delivering on time. It's costing us money. I want us to shift into a model where we bring automation and technology into the business so that we can have a much more efficient way of doing things. Now, they did have problems. So the system they had at the time, I won't mention the software they had, but it wasn't fit for purpose. So they were trying to use technology, but it wasn't doing what they wanted it to do. And they'd invested a lot of money in making it changes and all that sort of stuff. So within a few weeks, I'd say about 6 weeks, they transitioned away from that system.
So you were able to sort of sit with them and, whatever it is, sketch out or whiteboard out what the problems
a vision
are. And then you can come back with a solution to that. Is that what it was?
Exactly. And it was, it's continuous small improvements. So you'll solve the biggest problem. Typically, people will say, right, I do actually have this problem, where one of their visions was to have a digital sticker board, so that they weren't updating a paper-based board with the updates on each property being built on a development. They were spending a lot of money on the boards being made and they were out of date straight away. They were using post-its and stuff to colour code things. That's now digital. So they're centralising information. The way that they were doing it before was they get an update over the phone as to construction. How is that going? Ring Sherry Fitzgerald, is that house sold, or whatever it might be. All of that's gone. And they now have a real-time view of their business in terms of what are those units at in terms of their stage of construction? What are those units at in terms of their sales status or their legal status? So the solicitors are involved in this as well. They're inputting information centrally. Brilliant. And it's all captured in one place. So that was, I suppose, one of their big wants at the time. Yeah. They wanted that. They wanted to have a centralized view of the business. Yeah. Now that's, to us, companies are at different stages. Construction, though, I would say that not many organizations have it. So they would be different in that way. But in other industries, people are way ahead of that. Yeah. They're driving automation and actions based on the changes in information, which Gannon Homes, for an example, are starting to do now.
Brilliant. I'm just thinking back to that. So in our world as well, we're having the same issues as well, whereby we go into a company and they say, listen, this is our process. But again, we're so focused on cost that's just where we spend our time, is in cost. But I mean, for me, when I think of that and being able to go in and say, right, this is our process, this is the important KPIs you need to hit on a project, and now we have an enabler in technology to help us do that, it just makes sense. Mm-hmm. The other case study that I was thinking about when I had a look, you also do property maintenance.
We provide software to same platform, same sort of basic premise of bringing efficiency, automating processes. So the likes of inspection reports, companies that we work with Armark and a number of other organisations in that space. And a lot of those, again, you're talking about capturing inspection reports on paper and re-inputting it into some other system. So you're writing it on site. Yeah. That stuff is, to me, that's just, I can sit there for 2 minutes and say, okay, do you want to use a digital system to do that, a way of doing that, so you capture it once accurately and you're not going back to the office 3 days later after an inspection report and trying to remember the things that you did. And photographs and videos can be taken, so it's just centrally available, real time. It's a bit of a no-brainer to me, stuff. So the difference then between Glantus and, let's say, a traditional CRM system is that you're very much going in and having a look at the problem and then providing a solution to the problem, whereas when we come in with a traditional CRM system or an ERP, we have to basically build our business around that. You guys have a bit of flexibility within that platform? It's an agile platform, and that's really the key, because to be fully upfront about it, it's not a construction system. Mm-hmm. It's a data and analytics platform that enables people and businesses to work a lot more efficient using technology. You can have it just so that it's just used on the cloud and you don't have to have any infrastructure, so you can onboard onto this in a day. Yeah. To have that. What in the case of, Joe, that I have, right, Kev, I've got a spreadsheet over here that does this, right, and I've got some sort of CRM system that does a bit of this, and then I've got an accounting software where we run the accounts in, and Mary and John spend their time in there, and we've had a lot of the site stuff is coming in through WhatsApp. And how do you manage that? Like what I happens? Love those situations. Like, that's an ideal scenario. Okay. As many sources as possible. That's what I love. So you can plug them into our system in a few minutes. So each of those are just a connection to us. Okay. So you go, okay, connect to the spreadsheet, start pulling in the information. Right. Automatically. So you can connect to that system, start pulling in the information. Any information, let's say if we're sending digital dockets and digital stuff from site in through WhatsApp, and purchase orders and invoice, whatever it might be, are coming in from all over the place. You can take that information, and then what happens then? Typically, you'd associate them to one thing, so they'll all relate to a property, for instance. Or they'll all relate to a customer. So you rationalise the information so that it's readable and it makes sense. So you put it in a logical form, so people can access it easily, and it's intuitive. So they go, okay, there's Kieran's full portfolio. So he's a purchaser of a property. He purchased his house then. That house got built back then, and here's the stages of its construction. So you follow the whole journey, and the information is captured and it's all available. So full history. But you also then can make that accessible to you, and that's sort of the view I have. The future of construction, I think, is going to go that, we all know about BIM and having these really detailed models of that's going to, be we integrate with BIM, and I think it's a great thing. But in theory, I'd love as a buyer to have access to my BIM model of my house now. Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing an extension or something in the future, I can go, actually, here's a link to this portal and it has a BIM model on my house. Can you price up an extension that looks a bit like this? And they have all the information they need. There's a huge opportunity, and someone's going to take it around. So BIM at commercial level is
done really well. It's not yet across the board, but it's getting there. At residential construction level, right, it's not there yet, right, and it's not across the board. There's a huge opportunity for, I go and buy a house and I'm able to get a digital version of that house, and I know where every pipe in the wall is, I know where every cable is, I've got a behind the slab view of everything that went into that house, how it went in. Like,
yeah, well, I tell you why, or sorry, I won't tell you why, but I'll give my opinion on why that's not here yet. We all know that BIM is everywhere, in terms of everywhere. It's an emerging thing, but actually it's been around for a while, and there's companies across the world making huge efficiencies in what they do by using BIM in order to do their drawings. I think one of the key things that are holding Ireland back in this is that we've got people who probably don't understand BIM, who have done things in a certain way for many years. Could be architects. And, you know, the guys that actually are BIM efficient or proficient are the ones coming out of college, the graduates in the recent years. And some of those guys are being brought into businesses that are then asking them to, oh, I know you know BIM, but we do these things this way. And they actually lose their skills in some cases. And, you know, they're the guys who actually should be driving change. But as you know, change can be challenged a lot of the time for the sake of, we've always done it this way, which is a big problem. But, you know, it needs to change.
It does. It's. I mean, it's in a tier 1 level. It's there. I mean, in the UK, for example, you know, all public projects were pushed towards BIM. I think we're going to get there here.
Maybe that's the thing here that make it regulatory requirement for at least public. I don't know how that's going in the UK. I think it's going well. And it's a way where I just had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. It's a way where it could be brought in and people, you know, have to start using it. But I come back to the question of why people aren't. There's a bit of fear, and they see it as an expense. It's anything but. It's actually the opposite. It's going to save you money. It's going to save you time and give you a real plan. Mistakes will be, you know, eliminated. The
problem we see with it, and so we deal more with the subbie on that project rather than the main contractor, and it's to him, he's been pushed towards this. He doesn't see the value, right? Never can see the clear value and why I'm being pushed onto this platform. So I think there needs to be something done down the tiers. Like if these contractors are going to go, they are going, they need to bring the subbie with them. Of
course, need to incentivise the use of it, and that's the gap. I don't have the answer to that today. The next time.
Tell me, you do talks around the place.
I do.
Active enough, I would say.
It's a day of first today, though, I will say. This is my first podcast, and I've also got my first official lecture tonight, actually.
Yes.
As part of the Independent College of Dublin. So I'm doing a talk in the Dublin Chamber of Commerce, and I will be part of the programme for the Analytics Institute of Ireland. There's a management diploma in data analytics. So an interesting day that we'd rescheduled this podcast, and it happens that those two things are happening on the one day.
Brilliant. You do have a good trait and a good tendency to simplify data. I think it's something that people have a fear of. If someone wants to reach out to you and have a chat about their messed up processes, that's generally the way it is, and sort of discover maybe what you could do for them or what Glantus can do for them as a company, where would they find you?
Well, you'll find me on LinkedIn very easily. Joe Keating, Glantus. You'll find me on our website, glantus.com. We have a Twitter handle and LinkedIn handle, Glantus Ltd. So I'm everywhere on digital at the moment, but you know, I'm open to, I won't give my phone number on this, but I'm always open to have a conversation with anyone, and it's not, I don't have an agenda. All I want to do, I suppose, is help to bring efficiencies into business, or even enlighten people about the things that are out there. It's not about, you know, using our software. There's different ways to do things. And as you know, as long as people are doing the right things, then I don't mind whether it's our software per se or others, but obviously I'd be looking at them to use the best software.
Absolutely, and I can vouch for that yourself personally, and Glantus have been great to us and given us an education coming from where we come from into the world that we're going into. So props for that. Joe, thanks for coming in.
It's a pleasure, and I think this is the best podcast I've ever done. So thank you very much for the invitation again.
No worries, Joe. Good to have you.
All the best. Thanks, Kieran.